main body of research on corporate governance, researching boards of directors, looks at what are called the usual suspects. Things like, for example, how many independent directors do you have on the board, the size of the board, whether the chairman and chief executive are two separate people or a single person. And most companies, even now very disreputable companies, are very good at ticking the boxes on the usual suspects. What I find really interesting is the dynamics of what's going on in the boardroom. The influence, for example, of corporate culture. They say that culture eats strategy for breakfast. Well, it eats corporate governance for breakfast, lunch and dinner, I can tell you. The influence of culture is far more powerful than the usual suspects, the tick-boxing, housekeeping type issues. I also think that psychological issues, human psychology, plays a huge role in boardrooms. So I like to bring social psychology into my research. After the banking crisis, a report called the Walker Report advised company directors, when they're in the boardroom, particularly non-executive directors, to look at what is not being said in the boardroom. In other words, it's not enough to listen to what's being said. You have to be sensitive to what's not being said. Psychological biases are also very relevant, and a bias that is commonly mentioned, but it's not the only one, in relation to boardrooms is groupthink. That the group of 12 people on the board begin to think similarly, thus having constant change of composition on boards is considered to be important. I published with one of my Master of Accounting students, John Conroy, a paper on CEO hubris, and we looked at the annual reports of a single organisation to see whether in the CEO's statement there was any evidence of hubris, and our conclusion in that paper was that boards of directors need to be very careful on the personality traits in the person that they select as CEO. Because people who, for example, are arrogant, overconfident, the kind of traits that might be attractive to a board, but when they get into the position of CEO, those traits can ultimately manifest in hubris. I think in a boardroom there are two board positions that are absolutely critical to the well-functioning of the board. One is the chairman of the board and the other is the chief executive. And again, going back to my comments on social psychology, I think a good chairman needs to have almost a PhD in social psychology, because it requires extreme skill of empathy and good people skills to get a board to work well. And a board that works well is one that is all the time debating and disagreeing with each other. In other words, the diametric opposite of groupthink. And for a chairman to bring out debate and disagreement without it falling into dispute and disagreement requires tremendous interpersonal skills. How the CEO responds to a board is also, I think, absolutely critical. And then the relationship between the CEO and the chairman is a further critical element. And if those are not working well, it's very hard for everybody else in the boardroom to work well.